you know. He's a long way away. But he's back in living color. It's wild.
Yeah, true. You got the camera back.
That's true. Are we recording?
Oh my god.
Oh,
What
It
are
would
we
be better
recording,
if
Lev?
it'd be better if you like didn't run the exact same bit every time. You could just run a similar
the
bit.
funny thing is that this time I actually wasn't doing a bit. It just we didn't start it exactly the same as every other time.
Yeah, so what are we recording, Lev? What's being
I
recorded?
don't know, but
okay.
I have no idea. But I want to start the winning point episode number 8. We are here.
I hate this guy.
I don't know how it's gotten so much worse, even though my setup is actually better. We're back. We're here. We're going to be talking about Riftbound. We can just cut all this stuff out.
Nope. No, leave it
We're
all
going to
in.
be We are going to be talking about Riftbound. We've got the full set. We've got organized play. We've got tournament. We've got it all. We've got it all, and we're going to be talking about it today. First and foremost, though, if you're listening to this on YouTube or Spotify or whatever, hit that subscribe button. I don't care where it is. Do it. We are going to be doing subscriber-specific giveaways and all that cool stuff. So make sure you are subscribing because that's just awesome, and it allows us to do more cool things in the future. Before we get into it, Cass, Charmer, Pastry, how you been? This is the first time in a couple of weeks that we've all been together on the episode. Cass, what have you been up to?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's been good. I was at Pro Tour Singapore, but we talked about that last time around when it was just me and Pastry, and then from there I've been trying to play some Riftbound here and there. I played a tournament this last weekend. I played Kaisa. It went pretty decently. My losses were to people who were all in the top 8, so seemed fine with that, and played a lot of Kaisa mirrors, and I've realized I hate that mirror so much I probably will not play Kaisa if it's a popular deck. mirror felt abysmal, I will say, but the deck is very fun outside of that. So, and I'm going to Gen Con in tomorrow, so based on when this is recorded, when it comes out I will be returning from Gen Con though, so that'll be good.
Charmer, I know you're going to Gen Con.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm also going to Gen Con. Yeah, yet to be announced whether Cass and I get to hold hands, but I also was away, but not for Pro Tour Singapore. It was a different game. I was casting the Galactic Championship for Star Wars Unlimited, so I did not get to participate in the cool Riftbound tournament. I was a little bit envious of those who did get to participate, but there will be, thankfully, a lot more tournaments in the future, and we're going to talk about that obviously on the show. And being at Gen Con, I've already signed up for at least one learn to play event, even though I know how to play. It's because I take my son to Gen Con with me, and he does not know how to play. So we're going to sit down and learn to play and run through all of this stuff, and then hopefully there will be multiple people in my household playing the game.
Sweet.
That's amazing. I've been working. It's been fine. Excited to yap about some Riftbound.
Sounds good.
Yeah, same. But I'm not in France anymore, so that is something. I did mention that we have everything, but what we do not have anymore is Pixelborn. RIP to Pixelborn. We got the digital tools policy update from Riot officially. We'll get that up on the screen here. For those listening on the podcast, I'll read this out to you. Riot's policy prohibits any fan project that crosses the line into making a game using Riot IP. In the case of Riftbound, we're especially concerned with projects that enable Riftbound gameplay with automated rules, interactions, and resolutions with less need for social interaction. So basically, if you're not familiar with Pixelborn, it was not an official Riot client. If you're you can see it on the screen here on the YouTube video. But basically it was a game engine with all of the art uploaded for the game that allowed you to essentially simulate playing Riftbound without needing to call a judge about game interactions. It was all sort of programmed into the game. Many of you probably got the chance to play it or at least see it. Basically, it cannot exist anymore, at least in the form that it has, given the new tools policy. So I did run a small poll on my Twitter account just to get a vibe check, at least for the people that follow me or see me. Basically said, what's the pulse of the community for the new update? Are you is Pixelborn going down a good thing, a bad thing, or you don't care? 80% said that it's bad, 6% said that it's good, and 14% said they don't care. So again, small sample size in the grand scheme of things, but this was at least an initial pulse of maybe a little bit leading question that I put out on my channel. Cass, what are your initial thoughts on this one?
I mean, so like initially, I think I guess I would vote like that it's bad. I do think the ability to kind of like jump in and grind games to help learn is a good thing. I think when I was getting into Flesh and Blood, if it hadn't been for Talishar, it might have been a little bit harder for me to get in and enjoy the game right away. And even there, I know that like the stance from LSS seems to be like they just don't look at Talishar. As long as it doesn't make money, they're fine with it. But it does go against their like, you should be playing games in the Flesh and Blood with these like social interactions that it seems like is the vibe from this post from Riot. Because, you know, critically, they're not going after Tabletop Simulator and the mod that's there that you can play, because that you actually kind of have to interact with the person that you're playing with. And I'm not sure if that's the main distinction there overall. I think having a way to jam the game and stream the game before it's out, and even when it's out for the Americas, is something that would be good for the game getting to more eyes, more people trying it, more people getting excited about it. So I think it's overall a little bit of a negative, but I understand why companies do this or feel the need to do this. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, this always felt like a when, not an if. Like I think eventually this was going to happen. I think I was hoping it would happen when a similar offering was made first party available. So Riot themselves potentially investing in something like that. I've certainly used a lot of digital clients in my lifetime. As a card gamer, I've like grinded games on Magic Workstation a lot in my life, which is a throwback when I couldn't afford cards. And obviously I still play Magic today and have for many years. So it hasn't stopped me from interacting with the game and buying the products that the company puts out, and obviously third-party stuff as well on top of that with vendors, etc. I'm kind of with Cass. I actually have never played a physical Flesh and Blood game yet, even though I still buy cards and buy packs sometimes and enjoy interacting with the game with watching it. I think Talishar definitely helped onboard me in general with how my life is right now. I do a lot of things online because that's mostly what I have time for. So having the ability to do that is always nice. There is webcam stuff, which I think is like a space I hadn't explored too much, which might work for stuff like Riftbound, which I'd be excited to see more of. But like, I do kind of get why this happened. And as always, I'll give my quick disclaimers. I think most people know I have worked with or for Riot for a very long time. I am a freelancer. I work with Riot, but I do not work for them. I don't represent them, even though I often do just in my existence, because I was a public member of the talent team on the League of Legends side for so long. But just for clarity, I don't have official stances. This is just my opinion, not theirs, but it would be nice to see something in the future. So we'll see if things change. I think my hope is that, like, my optimistic take is that they're doing this in part because they want to replace it with something else. And I hope at some point in the future we will see a digital client, because I think those things are super valuable. Even a game like Netrunner has like a fan-made project called Jinteki.net, which is probably the best web browser card game I've ever played that's just built in a single browser. And I don't think Fantasy Flight Games at the time minded that there was another way for people to play that game, because, I mean, mostly they were just selling packs that everyone bought because you got every card every time you bought a pack, as it was a living card game model. But even now, that game exists mostly because of JNet still existing, because that game actually shut down, is now fully run by a community-run studio now at this point. So I do think these tools are important, but I think the line is delicate when you are trying to get people in stores at tournaments to play your game, buy your packs, etc.
Yeah,
I'm glad you ended on that, because I'm going to touch on that. I might be in the minority, and also I apologize for just clearing my throat in your ear, dear listener. But
that was great.
My voice is still trying to return to me after a weekend of coverage. I think this is a net good thing. Now, I want to be very clear here. I don't think that there are no negatives. I'm just saying I think that overall, with several factors considered, I think it is a net good thing. So the first reason is Pastry, I think, said it best. I was in the same camp. I thought this was going to be a when, not if things like this were shut down moment. And the reality is the longer that you let things go in the wild, the worse it's going to feel when you eventually have to tell those people or those projects that they can't exist anymore. So right now, I think if you know that that's going to be your game plan, doing so before the game even launches and setting that expectation is important. I also think that it's very important that they address the rules of the game correctly. And I do think that when you read their statement, this is kind of covered by what they wanted, right? I don't think that they want to put the teaching of a game, a brand new game that's not even released yet, on the shoulders of people who are not from the company and do not like represent the company. So specifically when they talk about that, you know, they don't want things where the automation of the rules and the game's interactions to exist. It's because the last thing that you want is for somebody to play, you know, their first 100 games of Riftbound in a third-party client, show up on, you know, opening night of some event, and then have the judges have to tell them, no, wait, you're doing it wrong because there was a bug and it was just an unreported bug or something, right? It's going to be a really bad experience for everybody involved. And when your game is first coming out, I think that the player experience is just paramount, if I'm being honest. Similarly, it also can ruin certain play patterns. And you see this a lot in Flesh and Blood, right? Yes, Talishar is a tool, but whenever anybody asks me for advice about how to prepare for like big tournaments, I always say, make sure you're playing games in person, because when you get used to doing things in a certain way, specifically the game doing them for you, you're not keeping track of tokens, you're not, you know, it displays maybe the top card of your deck when you play a certain card, whatever the case may be. All that bookkeeping when you have to physically do it is way different. And so your timing is off, and it has punished people in Flesh and Blood. And so again, when I see their statement the way that it's written, it's because they want that play experience to be learned by playing the game first. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not going to have a digital client later. It doesn't mean that they're, you know, 100% against that. But I think something like Tabletop Simulator is probably okay because it's not playing the game for you, right? There's nothing coded in. And even though it's not 100% the same, you still have to like take actions in tabletop to, you know, turn over cards or exhaust cards or whatever the case may be. And that also brings us back to the other thing to mention, which is the social side. Again, if you are trying to get a game off the ground at your local game store, you really need people to show up to the local game store, or else those games will never develop a community at that store. And then the stores are no longer incentivized to carry your product and run your events. So the last thing that you want, if you're a fan of Riftbound and you want that game to break out into your local game store, is for people to be like, well, I'll just jam games at home, right? Like, why do I need to go up to, you know, my Friday night game session when I can just stay here in my underwear and play 100 games? So that is going to be detrimental. And then the last thing that I think, I'm just going to address the elephant in the room. The last thing that I think that they also want, if I'm being honest, is for people to get used to a digital client and then start drawing the comparisons to Runeterra. I loved competitive Runeterra. We all did. That's part of the reason that we're on this show. And so it's going to create some like bittersweet emotions for the people that were entrenched in that game, but also will just complicate things, right? You don't want to spend your time, if you're somebody who works on Riftbound, constantly asking or answering questions that people ask about Runeterra, right? At some point, this needs to just be its own thing, and you want to live and breathe Riftbound, not Legends of Runeterra. So I think making sure that this game begins its life in the physical form is important. So look, I know this was a bit of a monologue, but I just think that there's a lot of pieces here, and it can be very like feels bad to just go like, hey, I liked having the digital thing. It's gone. Okay, it's immediately bad. But I really do think that they were doing this as a net positive overall when you consider all the factors.
Yeah, as a reminder, like Riot is a very experienced games company at this point. They've made a ton of great games. They know how to release stuff. And I think it's easy to be like, oh, how do you guys not know how to do a digital client? Like, literally, that's all you've done is make games that people love, which is true. Like, pretty much all of Riot games have been knockout games, and they've mostly worked exceptionally well, had good like service, all that kind of stuff, right? They're constantly doing that stuff. This is, as a reminder, Riot's first like real physical game they're investing in. They've made board games in the past. They've made merch. There's Arcane exists. Like, they've made other stuff, but as far as games that don't exist in digital, this is the first time Riot's really doing that. And to Chalmers' point, getting that right does seem pretty important. So from that perspective, I can see how that would work. Also, as someone that grew up playing Magic for a long time, I wonder how the like arena kitties are at that game, because I can't imagine how much harder Magic would be if you only learned through a client that does a bunch of automation for you. Even if you just like played only Moto, like it's easy for me to separate this stuff because I've played the game forever and I started in physical. But like I can't imagine how warped your brain would get if you only played online. And I think for some people, like they will mostly only learn some games that way if that option's available. And it certainly is a big wake up call when you have to play in a physical tournament.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think the points that you all brought up are it's definitely a mixed bag here. I think just for me personally, it is a negative for my experience of the game overall, because it was going to be my main outlet to play, especially before the game came out, right? Yep. A lot of people are like, oh, we'll just play TTS. It's like, yeah, I'm just gonna not do that though, because I don't want to jump in a Discord call in the community Discord and just like try to like ping people to get a game going and like commit a certain amount of time and a certain amount. It's like there's a certain amount of commitment to it that I don't want to do when I'm playing that type of game. Now, if I want to play with you guys or with friends or with people from a local game store online, like, yeah, I'll fire up TTS and we'll play some games, and that will be a thing that I want to do. But if I want to just jam some random games, I personally am just not going to do that now. And that's fine. Like I don't need to be able to do that for everything, right? I'm also one of those old school Magic players that has been playing Magic Online for close to 20 years now. So it's like the fact that it's not there is like it is something missing for me as a player. But that's fine. I think that like that's the negative for me personally, but like I can look past that if it's an overall good for the community. Whether it's good or bad is yet to be seen, but something that will happen that we haven't really addressed is it will drastically decrease the validity of people's stats for games played, right? Like you get to a point with like Magic Arena and other online games where there are like tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands or even millions of games being played, and you can have like reasonable stats for like metagame diversity and like matchup spreads and stuff. And like that's good in some ways, but it kind of ruins the like the beauty of playing a game in person and like having that, like the old days of Magic. Like you look at even like this is again dating myself, but like the old like SCG opens with like when Cawblade was the big deck, like Arena didn't exist, and like people were like, oh, that deck was so dominant, and like the number of games that were played are so much lower than they are now for any given deck on Magic Arena. That like a lot of the like innovation and stuff can kind of be lost in that. So I don't know. Maybe it'll be good. Maybe it'll be. It will definitely change my trajectory with the game. At least playing it online. So
that last point though, to me, that's like the biggest positive of it going away. I actually don't.
Yeah,
like, I don't have any positives for it going away really until you brought that one up. Like I do think when it comes to like say this like December tournament, which we're gonna cover in just a sec. And there not being just like thousands of games jammed on Pixelborn, I think the meta diversity and the ability for like a team or a person to innovate something really cool with the game just coming out is going to be like really high and awesome. I mean, I think there's a little bit less of that because like China's going to be playing for a little while and they'll probably post some deck lists and we'll see some stuff there. But I still think people are going to be able to come up with some really exciting ideas. I think even, every single week the meta for the weekly like community tournaments changes drastically because people are like figuring out more and more things. Like one of the top 8 decks was like this Darius Hook deck that was really sick, that just looks like better than a top 4 deck from China because it was like including Hook and doing some really cool stuff. So I just think like that is a positive, that there's actually less games, even though I would say less games of Riftbound is overall a negative.
We'll be covering this sporadically throughout, but I think that even like psychologically, like people are like, oh well, insert deck that won 3 tournaments in a row is the best deck. Game's dead. Like, oh, nothing else is playable. It's like that's
okay. Well, nobody should listen to those people ever.
Don't listen to me.
They definitely should.
Don't listen to
They definitely
like,
should, but they will. It creates a toxic relationship with the stats. So in any case, I think we could probably talk for another 40 to 50 hours on this, but we will move on to some just genuinely, definitely only good stuff here. And that is the organized play announcement. We've had it teased for a while. We did not, or we knew it was going to be coming around this time. We weren't sure the exact day, and we got it just a couple of days ago. There's a lot to unpack here. We've got the tiers of events, judge program. We got the sideboard rules. We found out about sealed deck, which I'm really excited about, though not draft yet. But Dave actually on Twitter said that we'll be getting that later. They're still kind of working on it. But Cass, where do you want to start with this? I mean, there's a lot to unpack here.
Well, I mean, okay, like all of it is super exciting, right? This is the biggest thing in any card game for me. That is the most important thing, right? I love organized play. I love competitive play. But let's just do like the tiers of events, right? This is like, I think immediately something that's very exciting to see. We've already seen this graphic in the past. But I think that now they've kind of broken down exactly what each of these are going to look like. And I just love that the qualification system, like there are tournaments that you can fly and go play that are opens. And then that will just kind of like qualify you up into those regional championships, into the world championship. What I was not stoked about is that it's going to be a couple of years before we start getting the biggest tournaments in Riftbound with the, I believe it was 2027 for the first world championship. And then 2026 was, which we knew would be the first regional finals.
I guess I'm up next due to the silence. I was pausing for a moment to see if Blevins was going to talk because we all know that he's on that weird delay, but I am not. So I was very excited to see this much forethought this early. I know that it's Riot, and so everybody is just naturally assuming that there's going to be competitive events because that's just in their pedigree as a company. But it's still very refreshing for them to announce this much, not just in terms of the organized play, but also in terms of the future states of the game, right? The announcement also included things like set rotations. So they were already talking and thinking about what are we doing, at set 10 and beyond. That's also very reassuring. I will say, due to my past experiences, just because people say they have a plan doesn't mean it will follow through. Yes, Artifact, I'm talking about you. I'm in it for the long haul, but it's nice, right? You want companies to kind of have that confidence, but it's another thing entirely when they are willing to just put the information out in the public like that, because that means that they're not just confident internally, but they're confident enough to say it with their chest.
Yeah, I think the thing that I found fun was like looking through socials. There's a bunch of people always pinging their Riftbound main account, like with different questions. And for a lot of it, they were like, "Yeah, we have like something coming. Just wait." And they decided to wait basically as long as they reasonably could, and tried to give as much information as possible. Obviously, they didn't give absolutely everything that people might have asked, but the fact that they wanted to give as much as possible does feel very reassuring. Again, a lot of places we could go here, but for me, I mean, the obvious one is there's a big-ish event happening this year in December, which is already very, very exciting. I can't wait to see what even like a mid-sized Riftbound tournament looks like, let alone something bigger than that that'll come, later in the future.
Well, but it's awesome too because it's a regional qualifier, right? So this is like this is huge already. This is like an open tournament where you can just go and compete. The pricing should be cash prizes. They said there's promos for top 8, but also just participation, and then regional championship qualification on this first event in 2025. So this is not only just like a big event to travel to, but this is like starts your Riftbound career with the first regional championships being almost a full year from this first qualifier, but you can be one of the first people who is locked qualified for those October regional championships. And I think that's so cool that they're announcing that, right? And they even did everything down to like in Flesh and Blood, what would be your armory or like your Friday Night Magic, right? With Nexus Nights as well. And they included prize support in that, which is interesting because usually that's like store discretion. But I'm curious if like part of the kit to stores for the Nexus Nights is like you give these packs to the stores to hand out for their Nexus Nights or something of that nature. Yeah. Because it's like their weekly thing with free card packs, including promos. Yeah.
It's going to be very similar to like what Star Wars Unlimited does. In fact, this is very apt because I brought back with me from the Galactic Championships the equivalent of what this is talking about. This is a box of them, right? But there's these packs and you get them for showing up at weekly play, and then you open them. I'll just do this live. Why not? Sure, see if I get something cool.
Crack it into the mic. Get the ASMR. Come
on. Let's go.
But so you'll open the organized play stuff, right? And all of these, at least for Star Wars, so again, 3 packs exactly. And all of these for Star Wars are cards that exist in the normal set. So it's nothing mechanically unique here, but they are alternate art treatments, right? So camera's going to be awful here, right? But you get 2 alternate art ones and then always 1 foil one. So I got the cool foil Cassian Andor pilot one here. But I would suspect that this is going to be almost exactly what we see for Riftbound, right? When I read this, I was like, oh yeah, that's 100% just these organized play packs, and they're a lot of fun. If they're done, again, similar to the way Star Wars does it, there's even some cool chase cards in there. So yes, there's alternate art for just like kind of everything, but there's usually a couple of legendaries they put in there with like a special treatment, right? So it still entices you to show up and participate.
Talk about packs,
Magic does. I do want to talk. I do want to talk about packs.
Love packs
for a couple of reasons. Packs are just fun to open. We did get the pack content, so you can see this on the screen on YouTube. But otherwise, it is 7 common cards, 3 uncommon cards, 2 cards that are rare or better, 1 foil card slot, and then a token / rune slot and an additional information insert, which get that out of here. We don't need it. I mean, for the first set, it actually makes sense to have like rules, tips, tokens, but like no one wants those things after pretty much any amount of time. Or at least don't give us ad cards like Magic did for many years. Bad.
I don't like the ad cards, but I will say this. The informational thing can be really nice when you are introducing new mechanics and sets as a nice reminder, especially if, you're talking about your sealed events at a pre-release, right? I would really personally like to see them do something, if they still want to do the informational thing, do something on one side and then do something, special on the other side. I know Flesh and Blood, for example, has cards they started releasing where if you collect all 9, it makes an image, so you can use it as like a cool placeholder thing at the front of your binder, so that it's not, does that too. Not completely wasted.
Yeah, I'm definitely in that boat as well. This is interesting because we got some information again on Sealed Deck, which I am a limited player at heart, so I was very excited initially when Riftbound confirmed that they were going to be doing limited play. So if you're not familiar with what limited play is, it's basically a event style where you don't build your deck before the event. You will get sealed product in some capacity and build your deck entirely out of the sealed product, or runes and other cards that are provided with the tournament. You're not actually bringing any cards and building anything before the event. For sealed deck, we got a couple of details here. The first of which is it's 6 sealed packs, so same as Magic the Gathering. The deck size for sealed is exactly 25 cards, so smaller than a regular deck, which is similar for Magic, like 60 card for constructed, 40 cards for limited. Here it's obviously 40 cards for constructed, 25 exactly for limited. So you can't make the beginner mistake of putting extra cards in your limited deck, which a lot of people like to do. And it's only not a mistake very, very seldomly. This was something that we were not sure of, and we sort of guessed as a community as to how it would be handled. But you make your deck with 3 domains or 1 domain plus your champion legends domain, which if you think about it right now would also be 3 domains.
3. I think it's just ambiguous right now as far as like, I don't know that it was super clear. So it's like maybe one of those 2 things, or it's possible that it is opening room for, as you're saying, as you get into 4 domain setups, if there's like a 3
or only
champion,
2
or 2
potentially.
Sure. But yeah, 3 domains as of now. For this set, it's always 3 domains.
It's always 3 domains. So already that creates the ability to have sort of zany decks that you would not be, you literally can't build in constructed, which is kind of cool. Another thing is that you can use the signature spell of any domain that is entirely in your 3 domains. So as long as both of the domains are within your 3 domains, you can use it. You don't need to have the champion or champion legend. Like Magic the Gathering Limited, card number restrictions don't exist. So if you get 5 of copies of a card, you can put all of them in your deck if you'd like. And this is another interesting one that I did not see coming, but makes a lot of sense. If you either don't open enough battlefields to field your 3 battlefields, or you just don't want to use the battlefields that you open, you can use a blank battlefield. You just, hey, I don't want to, use this battlefield is detrimental to me. I just am bringing a blank battlefield, which is just, it's a battlefield. When you conquer it, you get a point. When you hold it, you get a point. No other additional abilities. So, a lot of what we probably would have guessed if we were asked how Riftbound Sealed worked, but a lot of a couple of additional things that were confirmed for us. Cass, what are your initial thoughts on the sealed format?
I mean, everything about it sounds completely fine to me. I think signature spells are going to be really cool because when you play them outside of your normal legend, sometimes they get like really crazy. Like they're designed to work with your legend, but there are circumstances where I think they could get really crazy in different legends. Outside of that, I just am curious as far as like, do you just pick any legend? Are you just able to just pick whatever legend you want? I assume so, right?
So I was just scrolling through. I don't see anywhere where it necessarily says that, and so that's why when they were saying the 3 domains, or I was wondering if you have to open them.
Legends? Yeah, you pull no legends.
You have to open a legend.
That seems crazy though, because you're just down a legend ability. That's just like
you are. But there is a rule that I don't have up, but I think I remember roughly correctly, and correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. If you don't have a champion legend or if you don't have a champion legend and you also don't have a champion for your champion slot, you draw an extra card on your first turn.
Oh, interesting.
That still seems worse.
I mean, opening a legend's going to be
it's definitely worse.
Yeah.
It's definitely worse, but like, it's down to luck in some ways, right? Like
that's really interesting for draft too, right, Blev? Because then it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, I know draft rules aren't out yet, but it's like, what do you draft a legend and then you just like have to force that lane? I mean, I surely they'll think about this. In sealed, it seems less punishing, right? Because like a lot of people will probably open legends that their card pool maybe doesn't support that well. And so maybe they actually just like have to play blank legend anyway. If you're not allowed to just pick whatever legend you want. But draft, that gets really crazy very fast if they don't let you just kind of play with whatever legend. But I'm curious, I mean, everybody else for sealed, I mean, was this any different than kind of the expectation that you would think for sealed for Riftbound? Because to me, this seems pretty vanilla outside of that legends thing that is like blowing my mind a little bit. But the rest of it seems very, very good, but also what I would expect.
I mean, I think that it's about what I expected. The legend thing is, I think, just insurance. I don't think that you're going to run into many situations where you don't open at least one, because at least here in the first set, all of the legends base versions, if I remember right, are just rare, right? Not epic. Yep. So if you get 2 rares per pack, you get 6 packs. You got 12 shots at finding 1 legend. That should be fine. And then on the off chance you don't, then you can do the thing. The thing that yeah, I guess the thing that jumps out to me is the 3 domains, just because in set 1 in particular, we know that there are no cross combos, right? Meaning that there are no legends with mind and body,
correct,
order and chaos, etc. But being able to go to 3 means that we already out of the gate still will have the opportunity to get some of those combinations when you play limited. In fact, for set 1, we could see a situation where limited could be a far more exciting format just because we'll have access to those combinations.
Twisted Fate finally can use order runes.
Yep. Oh, true.
Yeah.
So I think Yasuo is going to actually be good, which is exciting for me. Especially if you open his legend, I feel like moving is actually really insane. So be fun to see. Yeah, I mean, I think this is about what I expected. I imagine stuff like this will like update as they figure things out and see what the format's like, and kind of the same reason with draft. And I think I'm glad they held it, because they're clearly trying to tinker and figure out exactly how it works, which I think is something you do want to try and get right, or as right as you can out of the gate. Apart from that, though, it seems exciting. The one thing I do want to quickly touch on, but not necessarily dive into, is just the fact that they announced a judge program. I think is really great. I think these are generally really important things to exist. They're great community builders. Judges do incredible work across many different card games, and wanting to put forward the program this early seems like a very good thing if organized play is going to be an important pillar of your game, because you cannot have OP without judges. That's just how it works.
Yeah.
True. We also did get a bunch of information on set rotations and bans, which is also really cool. So we've got a little bit of a calendar here. Rotation in standard format. October 2025 is when we're getting Origins release, at least for English. 2025 to 2027 is sets 2 to 9 release. Yep. Then start of 2028 set 10 release, and that is when the first rotation occurs. Sets 1 to 5 will be removed from standard. 2028, we're going to have sets 11 to 13, and then start of 2029, set 14 releases. Second rotation occurs, set 6 to 9 removed from standard. So you can kind of see the standard progress here. I mean, right off the bat, like seeing them reference set 14. Now, granted, this is obviously a placeholder because this is just extrapolating throughout the next 4 years, but I mean, they are thinking, at least in some ways, about the 14th set of Riftbound before the first set is actually officially released, which is just kind of a cool thing to see. Love that.
I feel like they're likely committing to, I mean, at least a few years of this already. Like, we expect them to think this will succeed, and I think the community thinks this will succeed. So the fact that they're like kind of ready to commit to that kind of stuff is exciting. One like really big thing, it's 4 sets a year, as we can see, right? We get Origins, and then 4 in 2025, 4 in 2020, or sorry, 4 in 2026, 4 in 2027. But that does mean the first World Championship in 2027 will have 9 sets that have come out before we actually play that first World Championship. And to me, that is crazy. That is a lot of cards that will exist before we have our first World Championship. Part of me is a little bit bummed that we're not going to have something as big as a World Championship before that. However, I see that they're trying to take it slow, try and make sure that they do it right. And, is what it is. But 9 sets is a lot of cards. We'll have the entire format before the first rotation happens for that first World Championship.
Is it for sure 4 sets? I was taking that
Yeah, they said
numbering.
4.
It said 4
Yeah.
on the article.
Okay, because I was taking that number as potentially 3 or 4, depending on where it falls. Specifically, because I also looked at 2028. It said sets 11 through 13 release, right? So that's 11, 12, 13, 3. And this early thing, October being, start of a fiscal year, but not a calendar year thing, I was just kind of factoring that in. So
Yeah, Charmer, you're missing the start of 2028, set 10 releases, then the rotation, and then sets 11 through 13.
Gotcha.
For 2028. So there's 4 sets still in 2028. But the rotation is cool. I mean, I come from a card game that doesn't have rotation. Instead, there's the Living Legend system. So I'm more curious on like the Magic player in the call's take on rotation and how it usually feels. Because for me, I'm like, oh, I lose the first 5 sets of cards that I have. That's a little bit scary to me.
Rotation is based. Everyone should enjoy rotation. It's like one of those things where like you might not like it, but you just have to have it in a card game.
Yeah.
You just can't let the card pool grow for the most part, like indefinitely. I think Fab is like unique in that case, and I think it's impressive that the game manages to be in the state it is without rotation. But I will say, I think one of the reasons they are so successful is because they're like policy on restrictions and bans is very proactive. And this is actually the thing I'm most excited about to see a company like Riot Games, the company that patches most of the games every 2 weeks does, is how they are with their ban and restrictive policy. Because I don't think, as far as I know, that they're going to do restrictions, really. I think you'd have to have a very unique case for that to happen. But I think they will do bans quite often. And this is actually something I'm really excited for. Because I think if you are a card game in this era, you should act like a live service company as much as you can. And I think just banning stuff and being willing to unban it later is a better usage of your time than waiting too long to ban things, not banning enough stuff, and not checking things up when it needs to. And I think from how Riot are as a company and from what I've generally heard when I've been in like conversations at the Influencer Summit, now that was a while ago, I think they are going to be proactive with their bans, and that is a very, very good thing. And I'm excited to see the 2-week patch lords, Riot themselves, go add a physical card game with the ban hammer, because I think they will act differently to other card game companies. And I think that's a cool shakeup for card games as a whole.
It's just going to be Dave walking around with a Sharpie.
Exactly.
Cards
Sharpie cube.
So that's actually here's the thing.
No.
No. Here's the thing. I was just about to talk about this. I hope they are proactive with bans, and I hope that they do not take their digital experience and try to translate it to physical, because I am very, very vehemently opposed to errata. I am a strong believer that for the best player experience, the cards in front of you should do what they say. Now, if the card is problematic, then you ban it or whatever. And if you want that card to exist in a different way, you print it in the future. But if you ever have situations where, again, new player experience is paramount, you have a card and then you have to explain to them like, no, it actually does something different, because we've seen some other card games in the market today wildly change what their cards do.
Literally, the current Magic the Gathering set has a card that is printed wrong in it, and every pre-release around the world had the judge have to say, so if you open this common card, it actually does this.
Yeah, it's
to all of the new players that are experiencing the game for the first time.
Most based misprint in the Armory deck for Aurora in Flesh and Blood, there's a misprint. They just didn't say anything. They just let it ride because they didn't want to try and errata it. They just let it ride. She LL'd, and then after she LL'd, they're like, look,
there should have been
decided to just let it go. We probably should have banned it, but like for me, I'm like, that's whatever, based. It's fine.
I wanted to have one quick point about rotation, Cass, because you are not as familiar with it as the Magic the Gathering players are. Without rotation, the bar that a deck needs to cross, or even individual cards need to cross to be playable, just goes up and up indefinitely, and it can never go down. And like for some formats, that's kind of cool. Like older formats, it's like, oh, you are buying into this format, both literally and figuratively, with the knowledge that like, oh, you need to be at this level. You must be this tall to ride to get on this ride. And that's kind of cool. But when your main way to play, your main way to get new players in, the standard literally way to play the game, it's like you need to like there is going to be a bar that you have to get, but when the bar is this high and can never go down, it just gets stale, right? And you get the like inherent thing in card games like power creep, which people complain about all the time. And you want to it's inevitable in some ways, but you want to be able to mitigate that as much as you can, and rotation allows you to naturally sort of like de-escalate the format, or like, you know, sideways move it at least, and that's a good thing. Cool. I would say based overall.
I would say one of the most fun things in card games is trying to like solve the new format. And so I guess like when the new format is like goodbye 5 sets, like here's the new format. That does sound really cool, right? Like it's a lot of change all at once. I would be really excited for like any tournament that's going to happen like right after rotation. I feel like those would be some of the most exciting ones, because one of the most fun things I've had playing card games is getting with my team and trying to solve the problem, right? Like we all just are working together to figure out what decks are really good and what we should be playing and all those matchups. And so rotation sounds like we just get more of that when it happens. And it makes sense that you can't just like keep printing cards forever. Yeah, 30 years of Magic cards all in one format sounds tough, and I know that format probably does exist. I think it does exist.
I love that format.
But like it's like that is a lot. That is a lot of cards, and anything that's been broken, of course, is just gonna like exist there forever.
Yeah, as someone that loves those kinds of formats, I think they're great. I'm glad they exist. I'm sure they will exist for Riftbound once rotation happens. They should not exist for most people. That is just unhinged and unnecessary for the most part. So just because I love Legacy doesn't mean everyone else should, but I do love Legacy. Shout outs to Legacy.
Yeah, definitely a cool format. But I think rotation in a nutshell is going to be good for the game. We're going through this in standard in Magic the Gathering right now, where a bunch of sets that have been around for a long time are rotating out, and it's a exciting time to look in on that. But let's hop over here. Speaking of tournaments, we had the biggest tournament to date.
That's so sick.
In the Riftbound Meta Weekly tournament here, it was 128 players. I'll quickly go over the top 8 here.
It was like a little less than that.
It really is.
Because it capped at 128, and like some people didn't show, but like it filled up, right? So
it had 128 registered.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So it's close. It was close to that at the very least.
I'll quickly go over the top 8, and then we'll take a look at the winning deck here. So first place was Kaisa, second place Jinx, third Ari, fourth Set, fifth Victor, sixth Darius, seventh Darius. Notice I had to get to spot 7 before I repeated a deck, and then 8th was Annie. So really diverse, specifically in this week, and also extremely different from every other week so far.
Yep. 7 different decks.
But really cool. Taking a look at this Kaisa deck, sort of an aggro Kaisa. We of course got we got Angie Kaisa now. I think one of the best champions in the game right now, at least by my.
I would say she's like
look at least.
Yeah, she's one of the best. I mean, this deck, by the way, this is from Kavira. If you're from Legends of Runeterra, you know Kavira. They are a very good deck builder, French player that made a lot of very popular decks in Runeterra in their day. And coming over, they've been really, really strong. This Kaisa deck is like very unique compared to a lot of the different Kaisa decks that we're running around. Like seeing copies of Cleave, Red Darius, and Orb of Regret are things that you are not seeing in most Kaisa decks right now. But they were in Kavira's list, and I think they performed exceptionally. The main rule that I think we haven't even mentioned on this podcast before that makes Orb of Regret pretty neat is if you reduce something's might when you've already dealt damage to it, it can just immediately kill it if that would reduce it like equal to or below the damage counters on the target. Right? So you don't have to do it first and then target something. You can target with a spell. If they pump in response to survive, you can afterwards just tap Orb of Regret and clear away the thing, which is pretty neat.
Yeah, you do have to be aware of your like when damage clears timings because it happens
Correct.
quite often in
Yes.
Riftbound, but that's stuff you can
Yes.
learn pretty quickly. I'm glad to see Sprite Mother, because I love sprites. This deck looks messed up. I honestly, the first thought I had looking at this, I was like, that Revisor card might need to get banned someday. That was my errant thought that came to. I was like, that battlefield actually might be a little too oppressive.
I agree with you.
It's definitely it's one of the most unique effects, and the effect is very powerful. And I think that's the only one I've looked at when I'm like, this one seems too good, but we'll see.
I was very excited when looking at this just to see the evolution of the meta, because the last time that I was on an episode, so a little bit ago, but we were kind of talking about how things evolve, and the tournament that we were covering at the time, there were a large number of copies of Defy, right? And one of the things that you do when you see stuff like that is you figure out how you can exploit it. And so having Kaisa come in and have Falling Star, which I think is just an outstanding card to begin with, but the fact that it's also so good into decks that have Defy, because the 2 power requirement means it just doesn't work on Falling Star. I like the evolution, right? And I would suspect that at least for the early stages of this first set, we do kind of see this ebb and flow with the meta, because it will take a little bit to likely become truly solved, if it ever does at all. But during that time period, we're going to see people go, okay, this is the best deck. How do I target it? Okay, the deck that was targeting the best deck is now the best deck. What targets that? Until we either land on some sort of triangle or whatever.
I hate Falling Star. I got to start playing Mystic Reversal. That's my takeaway from looking at this. I hate Falling Star.
Has units out, so it's like
I hate Falling Star because it's good against me.
Yeah, that's true. It's very good against Ari. That was the final. It was Kavira on Kaisa versus Ari, and Falling Star was a hell of a card.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wait, wouldn't it have been Jinx in the finals? Jinx got second in the tournament.
Just the way that the Swiss works, Jinx beat the Ari on tiebreakers, but it was like a final undefeated fight was between those two.
Yeah, there was no like top cut for this.
Yeah.
Okay, that I'm waiting for you to make it make sense.
No,
there we go.
And then you did.
Just Swiss. It's fine.
That makes sense. One last thing about this tournament that was quite interesting, as I did the most played copies thing, and Daring Poro.
Yep.
Daring
Makes
Poro
sense.
was the most played card.
So powerful.
In the top 8 of this event.
Everyone needs low drops, and there's not a lot of good ones. That one's pretty good.
Let's go, Poro.
Also, just great art. So this also a little teaser here for tournaments in the future. We may even have a little spin-off segments, other additional show for stuff in the future. So stay tuned for that. If you're like, hey, you didn't go into the deep dive of the tournament like you normally do, it's like, might be doing that.
Also, if you think that, say that in the comments. It's good for engagement.
Yeah.
Also,
do say that.
I want you to write in the comments why you think that Blevin's impression of you, dear listener, is that bad. I would be offended.
Amazing?
You should tell him about it.
And speaking
like
of
the mayor of
listeners, it's time for the
Got
mailbag.
There we go.
Into the
Longest
mailbag.
transition ever.
This one is from. Oh, also leave your comments and you can be on the show as well. Leave comments, tweet at us. Literally, if you just send a message to me anywhere, I will consider it a possibility to be in the mailbag. But we got Ty T fan here that said, awesome video. I have a question. If my main deck is Victor, what secondary deck do you think I should learn/play to shore up Victor's weaknesses / prep for decks he's weak against?
I responded.
Does anyone have a good answer for
I
this
responded to this one in the comments. I said, if there's a lot of decks that are good against Victor, you might want to try something that goes taller instead of wide, because I would assume that that's maybe the issue you're having. So I recommended Volibear, but I'm curious if either of you have other ideas, because that was just my first initial thought was yeah, probably just Volibear.
Yeah, that was, I'll admit, my knee-jerk reaction. But since you said that, I'll say if you don't like that play style, then the next one that I would do would be something either in the vein of Ari or any of the calm heroes, where perhaps the issue, if you're playing Victor, that you're running into is that they are wiping your token units as you try to go wide with spells, so you just play something with access to Defy or, you know, some of the other counter effects. But Volley was what my brain immediately jumped to for the exact same reason, Cass.
Yeah, it kind of depends on how your testing's going, but like generally the rule is whatever you feel like you're struggling against, stop playing that and then testing against it. Like,
Yeah.
the real trick with testing is like build a gauntlet and jam as many games as you can like physically jam. But I think all those suggestions are great. I would say play Yasuo because he's base, but that doesn't help you at all.
Yeah. True. Play Kaisa. It's the best deck. It won the tournament, right? So just play Kaisa.
Whatever deck won last week. Play that
one.
one. I will say that I think the thought to build a second deck is interesting in a game like this, because you can pretty wildly change how your Victor deck is built.
Yes,
so
that's true.
I would maybe even look at other options in Victor.
It's the League of Legends players, man. They have to have mains.
Yep. True.
Right? Exactly. Just keep playing Victor no matter what.
Flesh and Blood players too, for the record.
Guilty. I was a specialist.
True.
Not anymore, but I was.
Guilty.
Look, we have to buy all these cards, okay? So it's like, build with what you got. Next question here is from the Techlo Foundry. Says, my 2 cents on Shakedown. After testing with Kaisa a bit, I think it's awful. The agency of the opponent is always going to be a liability, since they can leverage whichever option is worse for you. Would prefer to run something that always deals damage or always generates card advantage. A good opponent will understand the board state and which option you need to win.
So,
Cass, did you play Shakedown in your Kaisa deck?
Yeah, I played 3 copies, and then Kavira had 2. In the winning one. I have context on this question as well. This was a comment on our 5-hour-long review every single card video that Mo and I did. And I believe we both rated Shakedown was either a 4 or a 5.
Based video, by the way, go watch it.
Yeah, Shakedown was very good. I have a lot of respect for Tekla Foundry. This is a really good Fab player, really good card gamer. But I also got in the comments, and I disagreed with him here, but mentioned, not enough games to really tell. So for me, with this question, I just want to hear from like Charmer, Pastry, Blev, where you guys rate Shakedown, coming from other card games as well, because this effect, I heard there's a Magic card like that is not very good.
Oh yes,
or
a
like
very
unplayable.
well-known Magic card.
So I want to hear if you guys thought Shakedown looked like a card that you would think is good, or what your evaluation on Shakedown would be.
Pastry, do you want to go first and talk about the Magic
So the
card?
Magic card that people are likely referring to is a card called Browbeat, which is a sorcery that deals direct damage, or you get to draw cards. And the reason people don't like this card is because the decks that want to play it basically like both options. And there have been some decks that arguably use successfully, but not really. Like having both options, because either you deal damage, which your deck wants to do, or you draw more damage spells, which kind of helps you. The problem is that because you're interacting and racing your opponent and trying to get their life total to 0 as soon as possible, giving your opponent the choice doesn't help you, because you need specific things, whereas they don't want to give you the specific things. I think Shakedown is a little different in the sense of like both of those things are quite good, and I think when you if you absolutely have to kill a unit, it's bad, but it's almost like a card that forces your opponent into playing a mind game with you. And I think that is cool card design. And I think Shakedown is strong enough that it makes that little minigame interesting. But how powerful it is definitely a time will tell thing. But this is costed way more aggressively, and the effects are way better than this fucking piece of shit card that no one should play.
I think that makes sense. Reaction speed versus sorcery as well, right? That's a very
huge
important
difference.
note. There's some cool things, but I also, seeing that he didn't like it in his testing, but in my testing, it felt incredible. I just thought it was so cool. I thought that was super unique.
Yeah, I'm probably splitting the difference. So I was aware of Browbeat. I knew that's where you were going. In Star Wars Unlimited, and it's just fresh in my mind because I obviously just cast that big event. At their championships, several people were running a card called I Am Your Father. And that is you pay 3 and it deals 7 damage to a unit unless they say no. And then if they do, you draw 3 cards. So basically it's like recreating the moment. And if you're the little Luke is like, no, then Luke survives and your opponent draws 3 cards. it was very successful for the reasons that Pastry was kind of mentioning, which is that the decks playing it liked both options. They tended to be control decks, and so it was either like I have extra removal or I'm just going to draw into the removal anyway, but I'll also come out like net cards ahead. So I think for me, I would rate, I think Shakedown's probably around a 4. Time will tell, obviously, but it will always shine when it doesn't really matter what the outcome is. You still have a plan for whatever they pick. Yeah. And shout out to production for being so fast with that. But yes, this is exactly the card.
Yeah, you touched on it. Like, both options need to be good enough that like they're kind of like they're going to be situations where the card is bad, but for the most part, you are happy with either. The action speed, the ability to hit units that aren't on a battlefield, also really powerful. So I'm at a thumbs up for Shakedown, but maybe not a 3 of. I don't know. I do think it is definitely playable and not like it's not browbeat levels of bad or those like many of those cards are not good.
My final thing I'll say on it is I talked to him in the comments about that, which I usually always respond about this, and we both were like in agreement. It's like probably just need more games. Like each of us need more games and more situations to even really be able to tell how good it is, because it's probably somewhere in the middle. It's probably a pretty okay spell that doesn't stand the test of time, but in an origin set, it seems pretty decent. But anyways, we've got more questions, and we want
one more question.
One more.
Yes,
one
more questions.
More question.
Take us away, Cass.
I got it. This is another one that I answered, or at least talked to the guy in the comments.
They're on
Paulo Casero. This is about what you said about Bring Here Thunder Song. Once again, this is from the 5-hour review every card video. I know playing a unit does create a chain, but I was under the impression that a triggered ability from said creature would create a chain that would give a window to play reaction spells / units. Is there an official ruling on this? And great video. I'll do my best to prove you wrong on Ari. I rated Ari a little bit low and then immediately played the tournament. I was like, I actually think Ari's a little better than I rated her. So we'll see. But this is Bring Here Thunder Song, 6 energy, 5 might. When you play me, opponents can't play cards this turn. I went and I found the rule. And the rule is that, in fact, playing any card does open a chain that would allow a window for you to play reaction speed spells. So if your opponent does play this and you are holding on to a bunch of disciplines, you can still pump your units to try and defend the hold, which is like the usual kind of way that I would see this happening, as this is usually used as a counter to green decks. I used it in the tournament to make my Master Yi opponent very, very sad as a sideboard card for my Kaisa deck.
Womp womp.
There we go. There we go. It makes sense. You don't want like an uninteractable, your opponent can't do anything card, because that is going to be quite strong. At least give them the thought that they can do something, but actually not be able to do very much given the card pool right now. But yeah,
notably no action cards on the turn still, right? You can just reaction card and you have to dump them in that window.
Yeah. So seems like a pretty strong card, but that is going to be the episode, my friends. A lot of stuff going on right now. It is a very exciting time here for Riftbound. Cannot wait to see what the next week of tournaments and other who even knows what's going to happen, but we will certainly be covering it on the next episode of The Winning Point. I've been Blevins, that's been Cass, that's been Charmer, that has been Pastry. We'll see you all on the next one.
Bye-bye.